to be at George Mason. I mean, this is one of the great schools there is, isn't it? It's absolutely perfect. Thanks for coming here today, and sorry we're a little late. Things are a little insane these days, but they're really fun, and we're having a really great time. So how many students do we have here today? Good. Well, listen, I just want to talk to you about a few things, and we're going to take questions, because I love to do that. And I love to have people be able to ask whatever it is on their mind and force me to give you an answer, right? I think that's important. I grew up in a little town outside of Pittsburgh called the Keys Rocks. Why did you go to Pitt if you're this excited? And my father carried mail on his back. He was a blue-collar guy. And his father was a coal miner. He died of black lung. And his father, was losing his eyesight as he got older. My mother's mother was from Croatia. She could barely speak English. And this town that I grew up in, if the wind blew the wrong way, people found themselves out of work. And my mother and my father, but particularly my mother, used to always say to me, "Johnny, you get out there and you change the world. And you don't take orders from anybody else." Now, I do take orders from one person, my wife. That's about it. My daughters try to give me orders, but I don't pay much attention to that. But the fact is that it's always been that way for me, changing the world. Do you know why I decided to run for president? The reason is because I do know how to fix the country. And I don't view this as anything other than selecting the best person who knows how to bring us together, solve problems, has the experience to get the job done, to get America mission. Young people that are out there trying to get a degree and make a place for yourself. I was with a buddy of mine the other night, and he was saying to me, "Think about this, John. You were in New Hampshire for like 100 days when the national polling showed you at 1%. Why did it show me at 1%? Nobody knew me. You know, when you're governor of Ohio, many people don't go to Ohio. You know, if you're in the New York media market, or if you're in Washington where reporters can fall on a bed and write about you, it's because, they don't want to travel a long way. But when you were the governor of Ohio and you're doing a good job, who wants to show up? If you were governor of Ohio doing a lousy job, they'd be all over you. Believe me, that's kind of the way it works. So I labored in obscurity for literally 100 straight days. And I told everybody, I said, look, you just watch what's going to happen in New Hampshire. I'm going to go and talk to people about my record, and I'm going to talk to people about my heart. Because I think that a successful candidate for any office, whether you're thinking about running for mayor or city council or school board or governor or president, it's the head and it's the heart. If you got the head without the heart, you can't win. If you got the heart without the head, you're probably not qualified to be elected to things. But if you can both show what you think and what your heart is, it's probably going to work out. And you put one foot in front of the other. And I don't know whether you know or not, but at a time when he seems to be, storming off to good wins, I beat Donald Trump and Dixville Notch by 60%. It was 3-2. It doesn't matter. It's just a technicality. But coming out of New Hampshire for the first time, my voice is being heard. And for that whole long period of time, we couldn't get anybody in the press to pay attention. And now they're finally beginning to hear. And now this morning, here in Virginia, we have about 1,000 people that have come to hear a voice of experience, accomplishment. And let me just tell you, I went to Washington following my mother's advice. I've been in the legislature before that at the age of 26. And how did I get elected? I didn't have anybody for me. We just got an army of people who, and many women who left their kitchens to go out and go door to door and put yard signs up for me all the way back when, things were different. Now you call homes and everybody's out working, but at that time, early days, it was an army of the women that really helped me to get elected to the state senate, and I went into that job. And I didn't take any orders from anybody there. In fact, Republicans tried to raise taxes, and I wrote my first budget, and that was very interesting. And then when I went to Congress, I couldn't believe the night I won. I was the only Republican in America to defeat an incumbent Democrat in our country running on the Reagan agenda, because I was a big believer in Reagan. I went down there, the only committee I found myself on was the Defense Committee. In fact, there was no room for me. But they put me on this committee. And here I am, a rock-ribbed conservative Republican, and the first thing that happens is I find hammers, screwdrivers, and wrenches that cost tens of thousands of dollars, and I got military contractors telling me it was okay. Well, that's not okay in my book. And so I became a military reformer, a strong supporter of the military, but we need to clean the waste out of that building. Because if you don't, you end up throwing money out the back. And then after I served for 6 years on that committee, and worked, by the way, to reform the whole building and to make sure the services could work together, I found myself on the Budget Committee. And I'll tell you an interesting story. I was in my hometown of Westerville, and I was filling up my Jeep, at the gas station, and I was complaining to the owner about how bad all the budgets were in Washington, the Republican budget and the Democrat budget. Guy walks around the tank, he looks at me, he says, "The things are so bad, what are you going to do about it?" Well, I got in my Jeep, I went home, I flew to Washington, I called my staff in. I said, "We're going to write a budget for the United States of America." And they said, "Well, there's like 100 people working on it in Washington, and there's 100 people working on it on Capitol Hill, and we only have 6 people." I said, "I know we're overstaffed, but if we stay out of line of the way, we can do it." And the budget that year, the vote was, there was a Democrat budget, a Republican budget, a Black Caucus budget, and a Kasich budget. Why'd I do it? Stand up for the country. And I'm on the committee, and we got a Republican president. I'm over in my own budget. Why? Because the rest of it was nonsense. And the vote that year was 405 to 30. I had the 30. And I probably didn't even get 30. There were probably 10 Democrats who went out and voted for it because they said they didn't want me to be embarrassed. Let me tell you something. If you have a program that's real, you have a principle that's real, you have a philosophy that's real, you stand for it. No matter what anybody else tells you, you stand on those principles. Years later, the mailman's kid, John Kasich, got more votes for his budget than the President of the United States got for his. Okay? And they were off and running. And why did I want to balance budgets? Well, because I wanted to make sure that we could have a growing economy. And I didn't think it was right to bring up this debt and put it on our kids. I thought it was dead wrong. I took a lot of heat and a lot of criticism. I still take a lot of heat and a lot of criticism from the K Street crowd because they don't tell me what to do. And then I ended up jumping over 7 people more senior than me on the Budget Committee to become the senior Republican and then the Budget Committee chairman. And after 10 long years, in 1997, Pete Domenici and I wrote the balanced budget with the Clinton administration. It gave us a balanced budget for the first time man walked on the moon. We paid down $500 billion of the national debt, and this economy was growing, and we had a balanced budget 4 years in a row. It's sort of funny, before that actually happened, there's a friend of mine, Tim Penny, who was a Democrat from Minnesota. And by the way, people say, well, Kasich, the problem with him is Democrats like him. Like that's a disease, you know? Like that's a disease that I can get people who are not in the Republican Party to support me for president, you know? But anyway, Tim Penny got an opportunity to offer a proposal to cut a penny out of every dollar of federal spending. And I got the Republicans and he got the Democrats, and we put the package together. And we lost by 4 votes. This was before the historic budget agreement. And who fought us? Hillary Clinton, all the Democrats, all the members of the appropriation committees who were Republicans. The whole town came together to defeat us by 4 votes. They won that battle, but we won the war when we finally got that budget balanced. And by the way, we had a projected $5 trillion surplus when I left Washington, and my friends at home said, John, they're going to spend it. I said, you got to get up every day and figure out how to spend $5 trillion. You know who controlled things? The Republicans. The House, the Senate, and the White House, and they blew it all. Can I tell you something about leadership? About the willingness to be an American before you're a Republican, Democrat, and stand in the breach for the good principles of our country? Well, that's what I'm going to do. Washington, you know, and they blew all the money, and I had a great time being out. In fact, many of you remember me. I was a giant television star at Fox News. But I had a call to go back in. You know why? Because my state was in trouble, and it's all about having the experience, the knowledge, the fortitude, and the will to enter a situation and bring about change. When I became governor, we had lost 350,000 jobs. We were $8 billion in the hole, 20% of our operating budget. Our credit was at risk. Everything was shaky and people had lost hope. And so when I got elected, I had a meeting because I knew what we needed to do, because I got a band. You know, I mean, we put the band back together at various times to do certain things and play great concerts, okay? And we get this band back together, so we knew exactly what we needed to do. And I knew I needed to cut taxes, not raise taxes. I knew what I needed to do to take on the special interests, because you know they're the ones that say, oh no, you can't do that. So I had a meeting, a lunch meeting, with all the special interests in Columbus. You remember that, Steve, you heard about it, it was legendary. I told them, I said, look, there's a lot of changes that are going to happen in our state, a lot of changes. And you represent the groups that you can either be for the changes or you can fight the changes. They said, let me give you a little advice. Either you get on the bus I'm driving or I'm going to run over you with the bus. And we ran over a bunch of them, and now we have a $2 billion surplus. We've created over 400,000 private sector jobs. Our credit is strong, our pensions are strong, and the people are hopeful in Ohio because everybody has a chance to run.